of the arm. In a previous recording, I showed you the pecto antebrachialis, so I just want to point that out again. We're going to use that as a reference here. So there's that pecto antebrachialis. Okay. I also showed you the clavodeltoid, which is right up here, and that's the clavodeltoid. Now, if I remove those, or rather, if I pull those back to reflect a little bit, you'll see a little muscle in the inside here. I'm going to cut some of this connective tissue down here. Get my probe in there. So, underneath the pecto antebrachialis, you have this muscle right here, which is the biceps brachii. Now, see if I can show that to you a little bit better. Let me try to zoom in here. Go. So there's the biceps brachii. Now, one of the most commonly made mistakes on a practical is to call this the brachialis. You'll realize that the biceps brachii is on the medial side, whereas the brachialis is better seen on the lateral surface of the humerus. So here you have the biceps brachii. Okay. And notice for instance, that the cat is in supine position, so you can see that there. All right, let's take a look at the flexors then, shall we? The flexors are all going to be on the medial surface, and this little one up here doesn't look like much. This is actually a muscle that's called the brachioradialis. Brachial meaning it comes from the brachium, or the upper arm, and then radialis, its insertion is going to be into the radial side, the radial bone, over on this side here. Okay, so the brachioradialis. Now, you want to be real careful when you're exposing the brachioradialis. You want to be real careful so as not to actually cut it. Quite commonly what people will do with the brachioradialis is think that it's just a connective tissue, and therefore they'll actually cut it off, which is a shame because it's a really nice muscle, and it's very, very small too, so it's easy to see how this can happen. Now, let's take a look at the actual forearm, and here we're going to see the flexors. Remember, flexors are all on the medial surface. Okay. The first thing I need to do is I need to actually cut away some of this connective tissue that forms a tendon sheath here on the forearm. So it's kind of holding together these synergistic muscles, or these muscles that work together in flexion. And so I'm going to cut that off, and you can see it's not very thick. Once again, you want to make sure that you don't cut off the brachioradialis, so just be careful as you're kind of using the scalpel here. Okay, so I'm just removing some of this tissue here. And you'll see it's quite strong. Now, the other thing that I did was I cut away some of the actual fur off the paw itself. When these come skinned, they have a little bit of fur left on the paw, and I like to show a little bit more exposure, so I cut some of that away just to make it a little bit easier for you to see some of these muscles here. All right, I think we're about ready here. Now, I like to use a landmark on the flexors as well as the extensors, and I'll show you the extensors in another video, but I like to use landmarks when I go through the muscles, and I think when you're learning the muscles, especially for practicals and tests, it helps to have a common landmark. So what I'm going to use as a landmark, and let's see if I can get in a little bit closer here so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to use this muscle right in here. Okay. Now, I've still got a little bit of the tendon sheath there, so I'm going to use the probe. I'm just going to try to get up underneath that tendon sheath and see if I can expose this a little bit better for you. This is a very large muscle for the forearm, that is, and It's also a very central muscle. Use a scalpel here, just make a small incision. Just want to get a hole started there. And get my probe inside there. I actually prefer using a probe on these muscles. Okay, there's that tendon sheath. Look at that. Okay, so I want to cut that away. There we go. There we go. Okay. So let's get that out of our way here. So you can see the muscles a little bit better there. And you can see the tissue's really, really tough. Alright, so there is my palmaris longus. And I'm going to use that as a landmark now, the palmaris longus. So that's a very identifiable muscle. Now, if I go lateral, what you'll see is what's called simply the flexor, because we're on the flexor side, flexor carpi ulnaris. So there's the flexor carpi ulnaris, ulnar side. Okay. Remember, these are all flexors. Now, if I come over to the radial side, you're going to see the flexor carpi radialis. So there's the flexor carpi radialis over on this side. Okay. It's these muscles right there. Okay, flexor carpi radialis. Then there's a little triangular muscle up above. So you go flexor carpi radialis, and you go pronator teres, and that's the pronator teres, this little triangular shaped muscle right there. Okay. Now that's it for the flexors. The next one up starts our extensors, and that one is your extensor carpi radialis. Now this has both heads actually, so it has both the longus and the brevis, which can be distinguished by the length of their tendons. Okay, so there on top is actually the extensor carpi radialis longus, and then underneath this larger one right here is the extensor carpi radialis brevis. So let's go back to our landmark, palmaris longus, right there, okay. Laterally we have the flexor carpi ulnaris. Medially we have the flexor carpi radialis, the pronator teres right there, okay, this one right here. And then we have your extensor carpi radialis longus, brevis, and then on top of that is the extensor carpi radialis longus, the brachioradialis, this is your clavodeltoid, biceps brachii, and then finally this pecto antebrachialis.